Okay, this is the response video to one of my favorite TikTok creators' videos that I had wanted to stitch, but it was just going to be too long. Lissa is her name, I believe. I hope I get that right, Lissa. And she is an ex-fundamentalist evangelical who makes content. Forgive me, this is going to be a bit of a long video, so I got to get my ass over to Ace to get a new toilet handle because my shit broke last night, and that was fun. So I'm going to do this while I'm mobile. The good thing is that it's just me recording a video and there is no interaction, so I can talk while I'm driving just like I'm having a conversation. So that's what we're going to do. Now, as I was saying about Lissa and her TikTok content, she makes gotta check everything. Okay. She makes sorry. If you haven't caught on by now, I'm a tad off. Anyway, she makes wonderful content that deals with subject matter that I am deeply passionate about, and that is predominantly the calling out of the bullshit that is religion. You know, she focuses primarily on the bullshit of the religion that I'm going to use the term, escaped from. And that's my term. I'm not necessarily saying that's what she is calling it. That's what I'm calling it. And sometimes, so hang on. In addition to her content always, and I mean always, being thought-provoking, right down to, you know, her fucking around with her cat on the bed and then gnawing on its neck and the cat biting her in the face and me going, me thinking, you didn't see that one coming, girl? Anyway, it's every single piece of content she puts out there is thought-provoking, and sometimes they also hit kind of close to home. And this one in particular hit kind of close to home, as it was a piece of content dealing with the physical abuse of a child, how to physically abuse your child in order to teach them. And it hits close to home because and I'm going to use my own term here, survived what I deemed to be severe physical child abuse at the hands of my mother. Now, it's a bit of a different response in that, admittedly, my beatings were not administered in the name of some deranged view of religious doctrine. My beatings were administered to me in the name of a life wasted. My mother was 16 when she got pregnant with me, and my father was 26, 27, late 20s. She was just a horned up teenager that got pregnant and struggled with the decision as to what to do. Now, I'm going to rant a little bit here and tell you a little background there before getting back into the abuse part of it. Both sides of my family were complete and utter fucksticks when it came to approaching my mother's newfound pregnancy at the age of 16. My father's family from southern Indiana was of the mindset, well, she got knocked up, that's her problem. You don't want to get pregnant, keep your fucking legs closed. Which is pretty ironic considering several people on my father's side of the family have had children prior to wedlock or after getting a divorce and having multiple, never mind. Anyway, it's just deep irony and antiquated thinking that serves no purpose in life. And my mother's side of the family was of the opinion, at least the elders of the family, were of the opinion that, no, they decided to have a child together, whether intentional or not. Now we got to get these two kids married so they can have a family. I say the elders because that was the position that my grandparents took, my mother's parents took. My mother's brothers, my uncles, took a somewhat different track, and they were prepared to drive my mother to New York to get an abortion to have me aborted. Now, why drive to New York? Because back then in the early 70s, for whatever fucked up reason, you didn't want to do it where you were from. You didn't want people to know your business, so you drove many states away, and you took care of whatever it is you needed to take care of. Now, those were the mindsets behind the pregnancy and the I guess, relative turmoil, tension, and dumpster fire-filled shitstorm that I was born into. That's the kind of animosity that I was born into. Back to the beatings. So, while I'll admit that my beatings were not administered from a religious doctrine, they were beatings nonetheless. In the video, what Lissa discusses is beatings that are done with a switch on the bare legs of a toddler. And when I say a toddler, I'm talking about a child that is just now learning to crawl and scoot about the room in order to teach them to stay on a blanket and not wander around the room. I didn't have that. If I'm being honest with you, while utterly abhorrent in nature, there would have been times in my childhood that I would have probably preferred to have that happen to me. My beatings came in the form, in the beginning, in the form of a belt. An actual leather belt that you would wear around your waist, doubled over and used as a whip. That was the first type of beating that I got as a child. And they progressed into shoes, and I once got hit with, I'm sure you're familiar with the metal, oh shit, I'm losing the fuck. See, I'm not even watching it. I'm sure you're familiar with the metal thresholds that go from room to room if you're going from like carpet to tile, and there's a little metal threshold. We had a loose one of those in the house, and I got hit with one of those one time. She pulled it up from the floor and beat my ass, literally my ass with it. And then that obviously progressed into just using her hands, first in the form of slaps, and then in the form of closed fists. So a switch from time to time would have probably been a welcome relief to the shit I dealt with. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with this background on me, this happened predominantly from the ages of 8 to 13. After my parents got a divorce at the age of 8, and up until I ran away from my mother's house at the age of 13. I had gotten hit before that, but not to the level that occurred after the divorce. And there's nobody on the planet that can tell me any differently. It was done because her life didn't turn out the way she wanted it to. Now, if you've never lived through that, then you don't know the kind of mindset that puts into a child. The thoughts that run through a kid's head after something like that happens. Now, am I saying this is the thought process that all kids go through when they experience something like this? No, because nobody's monolithic. No group of people are monolithic, and people who have suffered child abuse are no different. I'm saying this is what I experienced personally from a mindset, and I'm giving it to you because you need to be aware that this is what happens, at least in some cases, at least in one case, and how devastating it can be. Now, I'm talking about the mindset aspect because the physical aspect of it is clear, right? The physical aspect of it says, well, I can see, this adult beating this child to the point of literally bruising and welting and bleeding and cutting. And that's what happened to me. I regularly received welts and cuts and bruises and whatnot and what have you. But it's the mental aspect that people don't see. And I can assure you that I'm almost to my destination, and fuck it, we'll finish this in the parking lot. I can assure you that there's a mental toll. Now, how everybody deals with that mental toll, I'm sure is equally as different as the mental toll that each person experiences. But anyway, here's mine. I'm kind of all over the place. I apologize. What I was taught as this was happening to me is that, I guess essentially the way I would put it is that life is a lie, right? At the age of 8, I began to realize that the people who were there to protect me were not doing what they were supposed to do. That was a lie. Your mother is supposed to protect you. This is kind of fucked up and ironic that this is happening the day after Mother's Day, isn't it? Jesus. Didn't even put that one together, but fuck it. We're on this horse. Let's ride this sumbitch. The people that were there to protect me weren't doing it. So, in my opinion, that aspect of life was a complete and utter lie. It was bullshit. My mother wasn't protecting me. She was the one that was doing the beating. My father worked 3 jobs and was never around, so he wasn't protecting me. And when I say he worked 3 jobs and wasn't around, I mean he wasn't around, right? They were divorced. He was living somewhere else. He was working 3 jobs, just like he worked 3 jobs and wasn't around when he was actually home. I love my father to death, but that is one of his biggest flaws. And so he wasn't there to protect me. And the people in my mother's family were just turning a blind eye to everything. Now, maybe it's because it was the 70s and early 80s, and people had a different mindset. Or maybe I just had an incredibly unfortunate streak of having unconscionable cunt nuggets make their way into my lives, but the peripheral people weren't helping either, right? The doctors that I had to go see, they weren't saying anything because they were just accepting the reasoning that was given to them, right? I've talked before about how I was always coached what to say to doctors and to teachers, another group of people that I felt weren't protecting me. Explain how I fell again, explain how I fell down the stairs again, which was a big thing. You know, we had a 2-story house when I was growing up, and that was a big excuse my mom liked to use, was that I fell down the stairs. And so the doctors and the teachers would just, I guess, accept the given excuse, and so nobody stepped in. And so what I was being taught at an early age is that the lie that the adults are there to protect you was just that. It was a lie. In addition, I was taught far too early that the people who are supposed to love you don't. And so it begins to create questions in your head at an early age. Sorry, I have gotten far more. Oh, Jesus fucking Christ. I have admittedly gotten far more emotional in my old age. And as I age and look back at the things that I was not able to figure out and the things I was not able to correct, I become more and more emotional. So forgive me, I apologize. Anyway, it becomes a bit of a mind fuck when you're 10 and you realize nobody around you is there to protect you. Nobody around you is going to make this stop. Nobody around you loves you enough to step in and stop the beatings. And so at 10, 11, 12, I began to view my life as I'm the only one I can count on. You can't count on anybody else. Literally. And I can assure you that that is a mindset that was not broken until very recently. Very recently. Like years into my marriage recently. And I love my wife to death. And I know that I can count on her for anything. I know it. We've been through a lot of shit. Always carry napkins in your car. Sorry. Okay. But I still had the mentality, even after I got married, that she loves me. But you got to remember that other people have told you that too. And so it was through nothing that my wife ever did, you know what I mean? My wife has been nothing but, literally nothing but fucking spectacular to me for 24 years. It was just a mentality I carried with me from my childhood. You can't count on a motherfucker. The only person in this world you can count on is you. Ever. And that's a fucked up mentality to leave your kid with. You know what I mean? It is a fucked up mentality to teach your kid that, keep in mind that when you're 10, you view the adults in your family as the only adults, as all the adults in the world, right? You know, you see adults at school and at the store and stuff like that, but they're indicative of the adults that you have in your life. They're all adults. And so at 10, to look around and think to yourself, there is literally nobody on the planet I can turn to for help. It's a very fucked up sense of mentality. And I think that's why I kind of withdrew from everybody at a very early age. I withdrew from people at school and from people in my family, and kind of I put a wall up and carried that wall around with me forever. The whole time that I was out hitchhiking across the country and trying to find my way through life, I had that wall with me. I met a million people. Don't let them in. You can't let them in. Nobody can be trusted. And then going through my career at work, you know, I knew a million people. You can't let them in. Nobody can be trusted. They can know things about you, and you can be friendly, and you can even do shit after work with them and whatever, but don't ever let them in. It's a fucked up mentality to teach your kid. Another fucked up mentality to teach your kid is how to not do something as to not get an ass beating, right? When I was 9, 10, 11, 12, everything I did, and I mean everything I did, was done with the question in the back of my head, am I going to get a beating for this? There was no just go off and do something in my house that I wasn't cognitive of the potential outcome of. I would do things that were bad at school, or I would do things that were bad away from the house, thinking or having a mindset that I wasn't going to get caught because it wasn't in the house, you know what I'm saying? And so therefore it was okay to push those boundaries outside of the house. But in the house, never. I never did a thing without wondering first if I was going to catch a beating for it. And when I hear Lissa talk about blanket training, which is that concept of you, when the child begins to be able to scoot around, you put them on a blanket, and thank you very much. Dallas got a soft machine. Houston, too close to New Orleans. New York got the ways and means. Just when you're fucking feeling a little bit, you know? God damn. 1 minute.
Most of the cats that you meet on the street speak of true love. Most of the time they're sitting and crying at home.
One of these days they know they gotta get going. Out of the door and down to the street all alone.
Trucking like the dude man once told me.
Anyway. When I hear about this blanket training, I think about the fact that these people they're trying to break a child like an animal, like you would break a horse, like you would break something that you needed broken down and then built back up again, because that's what they do, right? They break these people, these children down, and then attempt to build them back up again in their image so that they're little clones of themselves. Once again, that's not what I had. I just had straight beatings. It was just a frustration thing. And so, if you're one of these parents out there that believes in this stuff, if you're one of these parents out there that hits your kids, beats your kids, blanket trains your kids, thinks that is the way to get across to a kid, I can assure you it's not. It doesn't teach them what you want them. It teaches them to stay on the blanket, but it also teaches them that you're evil. And if you're one of those parents that was like my mother and just took her frustrations out on her kid, then you're evil too. It doesn't have to be evil in the name of a religious doctrine. It just has to be evil perpetrated on a child. Stop hitting your fucking kids, man. Now, typically when you hear about child abuse, because I've read a lot about this, typically when you hear about child abuse, what you hear is that it was the father. It's usually the male who was the aggressor. That was the opposite in my case. I had a little bit of, no wire hangers going on in my house. Which is why the movie Mommy Dearest, it hits really, 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 really fucking close to home for me. And then I hear this video from Lissa, and I was like, my wife actually warned me that I wouldn't want to watch it. She had already seen the video because she follows Lissa as well. And I was I had just come into the bedroom and sat down and put my feet out on the bed and was scrolling through my page, and you scroll through and you hear the first few words and you kind of, do I want to listen to this? Do I not want to listen to this? And I scrolled and I hit that video, and she goes, yeah, blanket training. And my wife goes, you're not going to want to listen to that. Or not, you're not going to want to listen to it. It's just, that's pretty dark or whatever. She was warning me without saying, hey, you need to be warned, And when Lissa went on to describe the blanket training, yeah. I'm not one of these people that ever thinks about trigger warnings, and I don't think she needs to put a trigger warning on that. I wasn't triggered. Let's just put it that way. It did bring back memories. I said to you earlier that different people cope in different ways. And some people wind up being fucked up in the head and can't function in society. Some people wind up being violent to their own kids. I don't know how many people dealt with it in the manner in which I dealt with it by putting a wall up, but I pulled myself back into my own brain. And that's where I lived for years. Even while out roaming the country and living life, there were things that were going on upstairs that nobody was aware of. Everybody sees the world differently. Everybody sees the world through their own eyes, right? It's one of the reasons why, and I know I'm rambling, but it's just kind of an incoherent stream of thought here, if I could, please. It's one of the reasons why my favorite scene of the movie Forrest Gump is at the very end when he is talking to Jenny while she's dying in bed about the places he had gone to. And he talks about how when he was running, the reflection of the mountain and the lake looked like two skies on top of one another, or the sunset in the distance in the desert. You couldn't tell where, as he said, heaven began or the earth began and heaven ended, which is not something I necessarily believe in, but the manner in which he's describing these things, or when he was down on the bayou and he saw a million stars thrown over the water, or in Vietnam when it would stop raining long enough for the stars to come out. And it made me realize in that moment that movie was about a guy who everybody thought was this person. First Day with the New Lips was this person, without ever realizing that he wasn't seeing the world the way we thought he was seeing it, right? We thought of him as this simple, almost stupid person who couldn't possibly see the world in a complex manner and just kind of floated through life haphazardly and fell ass backwards into a million amazing scenarios. When in actuality, he was seeing the world in a completely different way. He was seeing the things that people take for granted. He was seeing the stars in the sky and the mountains in the lake when other people would drive past that and be like, yeah, it's a mountain. We got to get to where we're going, And that's kind of the way I've approached things since I was a teenager, which was when I left my mother's house and made the determination that I wasn't going to let anybody hit me anymore. I began to see the world like that. I began to see the world in a manner that was like, every day I'm not getting hit is a great fucking day. And so when I was out traveling, I was soaking in all of that, right? I got to see the deserts and the mountains and the coastline and everything in between, and take it all in for everything that it's about, right? One of my favorite quotes ever is from Aristotle, and it says that in all things of nature, there is something of the marvelous. And there's an absolute truth to that. And I just loved being out there. Probably the reason why I took the landscaping so well. But there was this other part, you know. There was that part in the back of the head that if I'm being completely honest with you, is still there. And that's that part of your brain that says, why didn't she love me? I was 8. I was 9. I was 10. What was I doing? And it's hard to reconcile the reality of the situation at the moment. And the reality of the situation being that she was a mentally ill woman. And she was. She was a mentally ill woman that never got the diagnosis. She died an undiagnosed mentally ill woman. But in the moment, it's very hard to reconcile that fact. Now, it's very hard to reconcile that fact. I'm intelligent enough to know that when somebody's mentally ill, they don't have abilities that other people have, and they're capable of doing things that are horrendous in some cases. But there's also that part of me, as I am 4 days away from the age of 49, that still says that shouldn't prevent you from loving your child. It's still your child. There's no part of the maternal instinct that kicks in ever and makes you realize that you're doing it to your own child. I mean, if that's the case, then that's the case, you know? And that's just something I gotta live with, but nothing, ever? There's no time that you look at your son cowered in the corner of his bedroom with his arms up protecting himself as you rain blows down on him, nothing in you that kicks in and goes, oh my God, that's my child? It's a level of human evil that I both lived through and cannot believe exists. Oh, a lot of you are going to see this shit and say, you got to get yourself into therapy. And maybe you're right. I don't know. I got to be honest with you. Until my wife, I stopped talking about it. When I was a teenager, I told everybody about it, and nobody wanted to listen to me. And then I went out on the road, and I didn't talk about it. I was trying to bury it. I was trying to put it behind me. I was trying to forget it happened. And it's not something you can forget. And then I met my wife, and in an attempt to be fully open and transparent about who I am, I told her everything about that time. And then I went back to not telling people about it for a hot minute. Nobody needs to know, right? And then I wrote my first book and started making this video content and my podcast, and I started opening up more about it. And maybe some of you are right, and I do need therapy, but this serves the purpose for me. I don't need somebody telling me how to feel about it. I just need to sometimes express how I feel about it. Sorry, you guys are 35 minutes and 47 seconds into this fucked up, deranged therapy session of mine, but yeah, that video. Whew. And here's the fucked up part about it. My wife kind of gave me the heads up on it. I watched it anyway. And I didn't give an expression. I watched it and I scrolled. Sorry, I watched it, I liked it, and I scrolled. Why would you like a video like that? The videos I like are usually videos that I want to go back and interact with in the form of a duet or a stitch or something of that nature. So I throw them into my liked category, so that I can then go easily find them again. And so I didn't give an ounce of emotion or reaction in any way, shape, or form. I liked it, and I scrolled to the next video. Because even now, even after 24 years of being with my wife and 49 years of being alive, I still, and it's nobody else's fault but my own, I still feel like I need to restrain my emotions. Now, my emotions have jarred themselves loose many more times here recently in the last couple of years than in all of the last 20 or 30 years combined. But I still feel like I gotta hold that back. That shit you gotta carry, that shit you gotta deal with. That is shit that you and here's the fucked up part of why, right? Oh, God. Because when I was taking those beatings, I learned not to show emotion to my mother. Not to show her the cries and the screams and the wails and the moans that I thought she was seeking. So I learned to absorb the blows and take it without showing its effects. Think of, I guess, it's going to be a weird comparison, but if you've ever seen the movie Glory, when they captured Denzel Washington after he ran away and they're beating him, and he's been beaten so much in his life that he just puts his arms on the wagon and takes his lashes from the whip while staring directly at the commander of the battalion and not showing any emotion. Very much like that. And so there's like an instinctive part of me that when the topic turns to that I gotta man up, right? I'm from the early 70s. I gotta man up. I gotta take that. That's my shit. Don't show that. What a waste of time, you know? What a waste of life. Not not letting any of that shit out, letting that shit just fester inside of you, and then putting that fucking wall up. Makes me wonder sometimes how many people would have been integral parts of my life had I not been putting that shit out there. You know, putting that wall out there. Anyway, this was me getting this shit off my chest. We're 40 minutes into this. You guys are probably like, what the fuck? So that's it. That's the reply to it. I'm going to go buy this toilet handle and then, yeah.